Hey all. So in this one, I wanted to kind of take a step back and do something that's more documentation focused than actual code. This is a practice that I've recently started doing with larger teams, and I think it's useful. It's probably overkill for a smaller project like this, but I think it still has its use cases, and that is architectural design records. And what this does is this is basically a markdown file that you make. I'll show you how to make it in a bit. And new developers coming to the project, this is the obvious use case, is they can look back at those design records, and when they're saying, oh, why did we decide to do it this way, they can read that record and get a little bit more context of why a decision was made a certain way and why everyone agreed on it. I also find personally that my future self can also be a new developer, so I can leave a project, come back to it in like a month, and be like, oh, why did I do it this way? This doesn't make sense. Why didn't I do it this way? And then not only can I look back at that record and see why it was done that way, but I can also use that information to reevaluate and say, well, maybe because that constraint that I mentioned in the file is not a constraint anymore. So maybe I can reevaluate things and do things a little bit differently. And you can apply that same thing to larger teams too. Is maybe a document was written 2 years ago as to why a decision was made, right? And then you can come along and say, well, this was the context of this decision, which made sense at the time, but now, we have AI working on things and stuff, so the context is a little bit different. So maybe the decision needs to be reassessed a little bit. So that's kind of a long-winded explanation. So I'll show you how to get started with that with a really cool tool to help you. So let's get into it. Alright, so here's kind of the homepage for ADR, going over the motivations, all the background information that you can read at your leisure. I'll include that link in the notes. If we go down here to design capturing tools, this lists a bunch of the tools that we can use that are based off the original code that was created for this, which is this repo right here. Like expand that a little bit. So this is just a command line tool to build ADR, so not specific to any sort of language or anything. So these tools are all kind of based off of that. So what we're going to do is, if we look at this Python one, I have this one opened up here, and this is basically the equivalent of this GitHub repo that we saw, just Python based. So we'll go ahead and install that. Alright, so let's go ahead and install it. I'm using pipenv as my virtual environment, so pipenv install ADR-tools-python. Okay, that starts the install. Okay, so now that's installed. So let's bring over the docs again. So after we install it, we can use ADR init here, and this will create a default directory called doc, and then /ADR that everything would go in. We can also pass our own custom subdirectory to it. So let's do that. The only caveat is, since we're using pipenv, we'll just do that first. So pipenv ADR -init, and then we want to make it in a folder called docs. Okay. So it created not only that folder called doc with one sample ADR in there, but it also created this .adr dir directory. And so that is, because we're not using the default subdirectory, it just makes this little file to be able to remember the file that we are using. Alright, so let's open up this file and see what we've got in here. So it filled out the date automatically. It put whatever the number of the release is. So it prepends the file name also with a unique ID. So if we create a new one, let's just create a new one right now just so you can see. So this is, according to the docs, ADR/new or dash whatever, and then we'll just call it test. So it creates another one with ID2 in here. So that's what it does. It prepends these with the actual IDs in here, which I've gone back and forth in my head about would it be better to like have the actual date in the file name so you can sequentially look at it, but it's still going to be sequential if you have the IDs and you have the date right here. So I mean, I guess that's fine. This tool does kind of limit you so that you can only use the IDs, but that works. The status, it just puts accepted right now, and that's also something that's kind of hard coded in there. But again, it just makes templates. And then so context around it is just going to be any motivation, anything like that, the decision, what's actually being proposed, and then the consequences. So what are the upstream effects, downstream effects, what are the risks that you need to look at, all that kind of stuff. Alright, so let's get to something a little bit more practical. So the reason that I wanted to start using these ADRs was they should be used for like a bigger decision, I guess. Not every individual thing because that's just a lot of overhead, but just a big decision. So like going from a CSV to using our database, that would have been a good candidate. So let's go ahead and do that. So pip env run adr-new, we'll call this one docdb. Okay, so then it goes ahead and it creates a new one. And what I'm actually going to do is I have this on my clipboard that I just had only from the context on, it needs that. There we go. So I basically just had ChatGPT make one for me that goes into so the context of it, CSVs, it has some limitations, performance, limited querying. Scalability is a big concern when using CSVs, that is indeed a motivation for moving to using a database. The decision, going with DuckDB, what are the consequences? What becomes easier? Like I said, the performance and the scalability. What becomes more difficult? It is a little bit more difficult. There's more of a learning term, so this doesn't really apply to us. But if you were on a larger team, that requires the team to kind of learn DuckDB specifics and SQL to be able to use it. And we have another dependency. One thing that's really cool about ADRs and the implementation is that you can actually link to other ADRs. You can have the tool do that for you. So let's say it's like a month from now and we've decided for whatever reason that DuckDB doesn't work and we actually want to use SQLite, which is similar, but to be honest, I don't even know the differences. But let's just hypothetically say that. So if we do pip and run. And then we'll do ADR-new like normal, but instead we'll put the -s flag, and this means it supersedes. And what does it supersede? It supersedes ID3, which is DuckDB, and we'll call this SQLite. Then it creates a backlink on DuckDB and says this is superseded by this SQLite one. And then on the SQLite one, it says it supersedes DuckDB. And so that's just an example. That's not something that we're really going to do anyway, but I just wanted to show you guys that. So we'll go ahead and delete that. Another really cool thing that you can do with ADR is you can actually create more complicated links too. So instead of just saying like superseded by, that's a common one, that's why that's called out, we can do something. So here's the scenario is I want to move towards using a fast API for backend. So what I want to do here is I want to say this decision influences, and then on the fast API MD file, I want to say it's fueled by this decision. So the structure of that is going to be, I'll write up the command first. So ADR-new, and the -l flag is going to be what's used to create this type link. And then this is a colon separated string, so it's a little bit strange. The first one is going to be the ID. The second one is what's going to appear in the new one, so this will say fueled. We'll just do that. You can type any sort of word that you want. You could say Fred if you wanted. And then the third here is going to be what appears on the backlink, so we'll say influences. And then just the name, so we'll call this fast API. And then, okay, so this influences fast API. We can get rid of the supersede, by the way. Forgot that was still there. So it influences fast API, and then fast API probably should have put fueled by the DuckDB. Okay, so that about wraps it up. So those are just some cool things that you can do with ADR. So thank you for watching.